Welcome to Dead Genre Chronicles, a critical podcast on the diversity of JRPGs. Drawing from the origin of the genre to the present day, every month we play through a JRPG and we invite you to play along and send us your questions and thoughts on it. This episode is going to span two main sections. The first will be a reflection on the last year of working on this podcast, and the second will be our normal fare where we discuss our game for this month, which is The Legend of Dragoon. I'm Devin, the one who prompted all the good and bad in the last 2 years of DGC.
I'm Becky, I'm bad at math.
I'm Leary, and I'm excited to announce I'm changing my career path to being a Kingdom Hearts scholar within the next year. Just going to use that to, kickstart my career. That's what this whole podcast was about.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Footstool. That's DGC. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about our past year, because this is our anniversary episode. Our second anniversary. Yay! We made it 2 years.
Congratulations us, 2 years.
The last year of Dead Genre Chronicles has existed in kind of a turbulent time. A lot of high-profile JRPG releases happened. Just off the top of my head and on this list I've written down. Final Fantasy 15 happened. Nier Automata happened. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild happened, which I would count as a JRPG. Persona 5 happened in English. And Tales of Berseria came out. And also, Pokemon Sun and Moon happened. We had an episode on that. That's a big thing.
Mm-hmm. And FF12 remaster, World of Final Fantasy.
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly, if Zelda counts, then Yakuza counts too, and that's getting a lot of popularity lately.
Yeah, I would definitely reluctantly call it a JRPG. But yeah,
also I played like none of those games, which is enough.
You played Persona 5.
Yeah, and Zelda, but
with all that in mind, let's discuss the past year of our experiences, both recorded for the podcast and outside of it. We started year 2 with Nier,
that was a good start.
Which was a fucking doozy. It's kind of hard to believe it's been a year since then. It's weirder still that it got a sequel this year. Like, that was weird.
This year's also felt really long, but I guess it's like the end of 2016 was really long.
Yeah.
And then everything with the politics kind of didn't help that.
Yeah.
I know, it's felt fast since the start of the year, I think. Like, it's just been so much happening, but, like, the end of last year dragged.
Yeah, for sure. And it was weird because the end of last year was made up of, like, games that generally went pretty quick for me. I have already forgotten and to pull the list up of the games we played because I'm prepared. But like after we did Nier, we did Ni no Kuni, which kind of blazed by for me.
Really?
Yeah, because like I was the person who had the least problem because I figured out the buff and hit the attack button strategy.
That's true.
I didn't spend like a long time on Ni no Kuni. All the side quests I think was still just 50 hours, which is a lot, but not a lot. I mean, what sucked about Ni no Kuni is just that the game was awful.
This is true. Yeah.
We're gonna get a sequel to that this year.
Okay, well, I honestly think that looks amazing, and I'm gonna be disappointed when I play it.
That was... Yeah, like, okay,
it's already decided.
We've talked about this in the Discord, but like, there was that fucking article that had the director that was like, we're trying to make this not like a turn-based RPG, and it's like the thing that never was, except it was on DS, and...
I guess he's probably talking about the DS version.
Yeah, that must be the weird disconnect.
Yeah,
do we even know if the same team worked on the PS3 version?
We don't. Like, I don't. But it was definitely like a Western interviewer. So the fact that they didn't know that the game they played super wasn't turn-based is just mind-numbing. Oh.
Well, that's just what the memory of the average game journalist is like, though, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Great Games Press goldfish syndrome. But yeah, so, I mean, it's kind of been a year of big swings, right? Because we did Nier, which is fantastic, and then we did Ni no Kuni, which is terrible.
And then we did Dragon Quest
V, which was pretty damn good. That's...
Another thing is Ni no Kuni's supposed to be fantastic, and I went into it like that. I don't even know why I expected it to be. Like, from its premise, I shouldn't expect anything from it, but everyone talked about it. Like, Well,
It was the exception.
JRPGs were revived because a Ni no Kuni came out.
Yeah,
It has a world map.
It was so bog standard.
We had that weird thing with Ni no Kuni where I'd got a completely different impression of the hype from everyone else, because I all the reports I'd heard of it were that it was bland and uninteresting, which turned out to be correct for once.
I mean, it might come from me just being when it came out, I was just actually on enthusiast spaces and not paying attention to the press. And people who play RPGs seem to love it for some reason. Well, the reason is that it's a pandering piece of shit. But
Leroy Lewin, mincing no words today. It's
the
start of year 3. All honesty, Dragon Quest V was really good, and it made me. Like, I was also the person who played Dragon Quest IV in the lead up to Dragon Quest V because I had the time for it, and I just want to play more Dragon Quest games. Like, the series is just chill and good.
Yeah, I think, like, the best comment on DQ5 was Leroy's that, I forget the exact wording, it was something like the legitimacy of Dragon Quest is the legitimacy of JRPG history.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, like, we learned a lot, I think, on that episode specifically. A lot of things that we've been trying to express crystallized around that, because we were able to put all the pieces together for the first time of like, oh yeah, here's what a formative JRPG experience would have been like for Japanese developers, and we can now trace all the things that sometimes seemed incongruous before that back to their common root.
Yeah, it was kind of like seeing the missing link in like a lineage, and we were just like, oh, right, here. That's it. Here's the nexus of where all this weird shit happened and branched out into different design philosophies.
So if you want to study JRPG history, you've got to play Dragon Quest games.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to conceive too, because if you play the early Final Fantasies, it wouldn't be wrong to call them Dragon Quest clones, basically.
I mean, that was originally what JRPG meant.
Yeah.
So Final Fantasy being a JRPG is just like, yeah, that completely makes sense. After that, we played The Last Remnant, which is
trash. Another swing. I mean, The Last Remnant at least was kind of... I don't want to say it was ambitious, because I think that's giving it too much credit, but it was kind of zany trash, right? Like, Ni no Kuni was just a drag. Just soulless drivel, but The Last Remnant, at least it was weird.
I mean, like, it was weird,
such
but
an
it was
incoherent, scrambled mess.
You know how people are like, oh, Final Fantasy 13 is just an excuse to use these environments and these systems? Maybe it is like that, but fucking Last Remnant feels like that. Like,
yeah. I mean, Last Remnant feels like a collection of assets. It doesn't feel like a coherent game at all. It feels like a collection of kind of good assets.
I mean, that's basically what it fucking is. It's just like them fucking around with Unreal. That's an engine test, not like a full game, but like, it's weird. It's weird. And there's a bit where if you play basically optimally, you sit there and grind cockroaches for 4 hours. It's just like, holy shit.
This is all true, but I still love the game just because it doesn't have any illusions of trying to do anything like really special, and at the same time it has like its own distinct personality, and it's just off the wall and it's really dumb. It's really dumb.
I kind of feel the same. Like, if we're going to have dumb games, let's have dumb games like that just at least it's not monotonous.
I mean, I feel like
except for the cockroaches bit.
I feel like people with like distinct personalities and made the game and they weren't told no, and that's exciting at least, because usually when a game is dumb, it's dumb because it's Ni no Kuni or Suikoden 2.
Yep, nice segue. You stole my segue.
We were all going to make the same segue, but yes.
Hello, if this is your first episode listening to us, Suikoden 2 is bad. Okay, goodbye.
It's like it's our year 2 byword for bad game, I think, in the way that Xenogears was for year 1. I saw a critic that I really respect recommending Suikoden 2 on Twitter the other day. I was like, oh,
yeah,
this makes me sad.
The thing about Suikoden 2 is I almost like just like everything about the game. I like the awkward art and how it's like strangely put together, and the combat doesn't flow right, but it's at least sometimes interesting, and it's fun using all the characters, but the plotting is awful. It's just actually awful. It's like the worst JRPG story since Xenogears.
I think it was before Xenogears, but
well, since I played Xenogears.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fun thing to do with Suikoden 2 is some sort of exclamation mark drinking game, right?
If you want to die.
Because that will give you the swift release of death before you play too much Suikoden 2. Oh god, that game's awful.
I don't think the localization isn't even the worst, but it's still...
It's bad enough to great.
I don't like when I like the way Final Fantasy 12 was talked about and the way Suikoden 2 is talked about is just actually massively fucked up. The difference between like they're both political games with like whatever. They're both compared to Game of Thrones, and one of them's good.
God, the comparison of FF12 to Game of Thrones is just maddening. Like, shut the fuck up! Mind you, I suppose I did the other half, like, on the podcast on FF12, I did the other half of that, which is comparing FF12 to, like, real-life politics. But also, there was a good reason for that, because it's actually a competent political analogy. We'll get to that.
I mean, we fucking did last time. Like, that was last month. We don't need to do it again. Much like Game of Thrones, Pokemon is popular. That's a bad segue.
That's exactly how people use Game of Thrones comparisons, though.
Yeah, it is. We played Pokemon.
It was... yeah, it's... I've got a list here, and I've just given each one of the games like a we liked it, we didn't like it note as a reminder. And Pokemon's the only one where I was like, this we had no
squiggly mark.
Concept. Like, I literally drew a tilde, like an actual squiggly mark. So, like, it was my first Pokemon game, and it was a little bit useful for understanding what the hell you people are on about when you talk about like this encyclopedic knowledge of Pokemon that you all seem to have. But it was kind of the antithesis of the Dragon Quest experience, right? It's like you have to understand other JRPG stuff quite well to understand how Pokemon relates to the genre, rather than playing this and going, oh, right, I see how this has been influential.
Yeah.
But then also I think Pokemon's influence is more obvious because it was cloned. You know, lots of games came out with pet systems, and lots of games that didn't have pet systems added them. Like, Pokemon's influence is much more like a marketing people type influence than a developer influence, I think.
Speaking as a long-time Pokemon fan, Sun and Moon is probably like the first entry that really disappointed me. And a lot of people felt this with X and Y, but I think X and Y stuck to the tenets of Pokemon I enjoy, which is just like intricate urban areas, and you're allowed to explore various neatly arranged biomes, and you have these cool set pieces and gems and stuff. And Sun and Moon was a really railroaded experience with a lot of less interesting places to do and see, and more emphasis on the story, which was pretty decent, but just not what I play Pokemon for. And I clashed with people on this, but Sun and Moon is probably like my least favorite gen on Pokemon.
I stopped playing after Gen 4 just because I was kind of burnt out on the like collect 'em all style of play that I had, and that was the only real reason I kept playing, and that was mainly because I wanted to have a reliable, like, I can ask my parents for this game, it'll last me 7 or 8 months of really intense play. And once I got to like high school, I figured out how to like pirate shit, so that didn't need to happen. But yeah, Sun and Moon was really disappointing in its like in the scope of its environments, and the content of the environments was kind of lackluster as well, but it just didn't feel like... I just recently read Video Game King's Mario Kart 8 thing, and he brought up like theme park ride comparisons, or theme park in general. And that's... I do mean this as kind of an insult. Pokemon Sun and Moon felt like a theme park more than like even remotely threatening as an adventure.
I compared it to like just irresponsible tourism, and someone later wrote an article about it, probably not because of me, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of the feeling you get off of it. It's really sanitized and like disrespectful of the areas it's presenting. And I think the reason people like it is because of the story, and it's a tone rare for video games, at least big budget video games, where it's just really feel good, optimistic, straightforward about coming to age and having friends. But I mean, that's also why I like Persona, I guess. But like that alone is not... I can do that by myself. I can do that.
Speaking of games about coming of age and having friends, we played Earthbound after that. And we had a guest for that episode, Robert Moore, Bloody Honey, on Twitter. That was a cool game to play because it was basically Dragon Quest again, but with a wacky flavor, which I don't mind.
Yeah, like Earthbound, of all the like cult favorite JRPGs that we've played, Earthbound I think is the one that stood up to its reputation best.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's
particularly interesting given... Oh god, what's the guy's name? The writer.
Shigesato Itoi?
I think so. Being not a video games person, generally, and just writing them other games. Like, it's interesting that that's the thing that's translated into something that stands up whereas like certain other cult
Suikoden 2
JRPG writers.
I still amazed.
Suikoden 2.
Yeah, Suikoden 2, like the two writers on that. I remember reading like a Wikipedia thing about it, but like they basically wrote Suikoden 2 based on some like the water margin.
The water margin, yeah.
But then they couldn't just pitch that game out of the gate, so they had to write Suikoden 1 as like a pitch to Konami to be like, hey, we can make a video game with RPG elements and stuff. And that ends up being just like this really fucking overly simple story that ends up working way better because it's not, I'm going to poison my own blood so that you drink it and die. I still can't believe that's a plot point in Suikoden 2. Oh. I poisoned my own blood.
And yeah, I mean, the dig here is Suikoden 2 is written by people who made video games, and they're interested in video games, and they like video games. And
nothing else.
Earthbound's made by someone with more perspective.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And while video games about video games can be interesting and well done, I'd rather have some more worldly views.
There's a difference between video games about video games and video games made by people who only know anything about video games.
Pretty much.
And I think that's not as necessarily as much as a weakness now, at least if you read game criticism, you're going to end up with perspectives outside of video games if you're, putting that much effort into learning about video games.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the resources were like necessarily there in the past. And a lot of our so-called auteurs, I can't even say the word, in games are people with outside interests. Like Kojima celebrated, but he always wanted to make movies and just settled into video games because, he couldn't actually make it in movies. And I think it's pretty important to have, not like, you don't need to be like the Renaissance person, you don't need to know everything, but just like, video games aren't this swallowing all important thing from like either when you think about them or when you make them.
Mm-hmm.
Know which way round a book goes when you want to read it, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Speaking of influencing, like the segues just keep happening. Speaking of outside influence, we played Persona after that. Persona 1.
Which was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. It just made me more interested in playing Megaten games.
Yeah.
Because I think the plotting was interesting, but not like a bit too thin on the ground for me. I would like a bit more meat and not... That game, once I figured out I could break the casino, was over.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like its strength was a more kind of tone thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we unpicked some thematic stuff that worked quite well when we did the episode, but also just, it doesn't feel like a big fantasy adventure, right? It's much more a modern and contemporary urban fantasy story. And for all that the better known Persona games still have that to an extent, I think they fritter it away by just being too long. But because Persona 1 is quite tight, the dungeons are quite long, the final boss was like the longest single encounter I've ever played in a JRPG, I think. Well, Yasmat, but it still felt very tight and very pacey in a way that, if you compare contemporary urban fantasy novels to like high fantasy, there's a different prose style associated with urban fantasy stuff that's much faster paced, and Persona felt like it had caught on to that kind of difference, and that was a lot of why it stood out for me.
Yeah, I think so. The Persona team, the new Persona team, like 3 through 5, are apparently working on a fantasy RPG next, which will probably do better with their style of prose and like pacing and stuff, and also won't have to deal with absolutely stupid bullshit in urban settings.
I was just glad people liked it because it's like Persona fans make it the butt of all their jokes. Probably just because it's slog to play, but when I played it, I was like, wow, this actually, all these themes in the story like hit me in a very personal way, and people have been making fun of this game forever. Like, my first impression of it was my friend telling me how awful it is and you shouldn't play it. That just made me want to play it.
Yep, that is incredibly you.
But
it's also incredibly JRPGs,
yeah,
right?
a little bit. That's why I fucking played Time and Eternity and started this whole fucking avalanche of mistakes.
But I didn't like it at first, right? And I was kind of just playing it because it was funny and it was bad and I could make fun of it. But then, like, at some point I was like, wait, this is actually pretty deep, and this game's like a lot smarter than let on. And because I was primed to think it was like the worst game ever, I kind of like fell in love with it because it just surprised me a lot, my expectations for the game. And I don't really think the problem with new Personas is that they're too long. Like, I've been rethinking that line Like, I mean, of course, the issue is that it drags on for too long, but it's also because, the writing can become asinine. And if you're going to have something really long and it's, bad writing, that just means you didn't edit out the parts that didn't land. And you should have made it shorter in the sense that the parts that are dumb shouldn't have been in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I say it's long, I'm not necessarily saying it's bad to be long. I'm just saying, like, it lost the sense of pacing that I really liked about Persona 1.
Yeah, I get it.
I actually really appreciate, in some ways, the length of the later Persona games and what they do with the passage of time, but also that none of them are as good as, like, the internet thinks they are, and Persona has some other problems that are really big and really serious and really loathsome.
I think because, Persona 1's, like, kind of sharpening to a single point, and the other Persona games are just really all over the place and contradict themselves, and they're very messy games and not in an entertaining way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of, maybe this is a weird analogy, but imagine a bridge. If you want to close a short gap, which is what Persona did, you don't need as much like supporting pillars, but when the bridge gets like 5 times as long, you need much more than 5 times the supporting pillars, because there's a lot more shit to deal with, and I don't think later Personas quite get that support in the writing. But they sure do like to stretch out that bridge. Good lord. Having recently played Persona 5 in a week, fuck.
One word reviews.
I mean, yeah. Speaking of fuck, Skies of Arcadia.
Wow.
I'm pretty much like that game was execrable and loathsome and don't play
You went into that month knowing you were gonna definitely be super done with that game by the end of the month.
I mean, I had fond memories of it going into it, and I have moved to a position for which that game is no longer good enough.
You have played another game.
I mean, I played other games before playing Skies of Arcadia. I just, like, particular things that I look for now and that I think are important now, I didn't think of as important last time I played the game. And I think those things are not just important to me, they're important generally, particularly the kind of racial politics stuff. Mm-hmm. And, like, the racial politics of that game are hideous.
I mean, yeah, I went into things that are like morally wrong, I guess, with Skies of Arcadia, but also I just kind of had like a personal repulsion to a lot of the themes in the game. It reminded me of Grandia 2, where I just, like, me as a person could not get along with the game at all.
Yeah, but at least with Skies of Arcadia, we all ended up agreeing on how that game was not great. Grandia 2 had a bit more tension.
But Skies of Arcadia, it's like hard to redeem anything out of the premise.
Yeah. Speaking of unredeemable trash, Rogue Galaxy came after that.
Oh my god.
I mean, Rogue Galaxy at least was kind of harmless. It was just incompetent and tiresome.
It kept pissing itself, but it tried to look cute while it was doing it, and it failed miserably.
So talking about length, I actually enjoy really campy, horrible things, when it's only going to take up an hour of my time. And Rogue Galaxy, it doesn't. It takes like 30, 40, 50 hours of your time, and it's just...
It's so long! It's so much longer than I thought it would be.
It's just really insulting of a game to just, like, anyone who plays games and has thoughts. This is my Yahtzee review now. That's just, like, a good old bad game in that, like, it doesn't make me mad. It's just...
You're not mad, you're just disappointed.
Yeah. It's made by people who are just not great game designers, even though they tried.
And it's also the second level 5 game we played in a year, and that was a mistake, probably. Now I feel like I have a grudge against them, which I probably should, honestly, but...
Yep.
And then after that, we played Final Fantasy V as part of the 4-Job Fiesta, which was neat, and I'll probably do it again next year.
I can definitely see myself doing 4-Job Fiesta again, although it's not at a great time of the year for me, so...
I mean, it's June to the end of August. It's just like the entire summer.
That's true, actually. I don't have to do it in the time period. That's right.
Also, we also both finished in a week, so it wasn't super hard. Like, that game has weird ways to break it open. Speaking of weird ways to break a Final Fantasy game open, Final Fantasy XII was also a thing you played way too much of.
I've played 200 hours of that game this year. I will happily play another 50 if I get the time. It's still my favourite game. It still stands up. To be honest, I think like this year is possibly bookended by my 2 favourite video games. I don't know how we're going to top that.
It's certainly not going to be with our monthly game this fucking month. Like, you didn't... yeah.
No. But yeah, like, I mean, I said I wanted to pick up on something with like FF12 and the politics stuff. Something that I've become increasingly confident in the opinion of is that part of the failure of Western criticism in Japanese games is the inability to recognize the existence of a Japanese perspective on the world, right? Is the inability to recognize that there are Japanese traditions and cultural positions. We just dismiss it all as like wacky Japanese stuff, right? But I think what FF12 shows is that, and like it shouldn't need showing, but it does, is that Japanese people are people with a broad understanding of the world and a particular sensitivity to some political issues, and it's possible to engage with them as human beings, not as this weird Eastern other that has all these problematic associations with certain kinds of cultural norm.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at Japanese art, we should be aware of the fact that Japan, yes, is different to the West, but is not ignorant of the West and responds to the West. And particularly, I think, in video games, responds to the West because so much of the market is international. So the fact that we don't see people talking about FF12 and nukes, don't see people talking about FF12 and the invasion of Iraq and Iraq and Afghanistan, those are oversights partly born of just being bad at criticism, but partly born of thinking that Japanese developers must be as disengaged from the world as Western developers are, which is an unjustified assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly some of them are not terribly well in touch with what's going on, but some of them are clearly very sensitive to it. And Japan has a particular reason to pay attention to American politics. To it, American troops are still stationed in Japan. Japan's still paying basically protection money to America and to the American military.
I mean, on an obvious note, like Metal Gear Solid is such an explicitly and obviously political series of games and has historically been treated as like this meme comedy game that isn't actually very smart at politics until very recently. And
or it's a game about games.
Yeah, and it's about games and not
something
about
very solipsistic.
Not about like American militarism and aggression.
Well, and one of the points we made when talking about FF12 is that when you make a game about games, or when you make a game that is read about games in the West, it's actually a game about the West, but our idea of what games is inseparable from kind of Western imperialism and capitalism. And so on.
I actually want to bring up, you wrote about Final Fantasy 15, which was also in the last year, and I'm pretty sure you were the one who brought up the fact that everyone was so incredibly quick to call Cindy out for being
too sexualized.
Too sexual. But it's just like, that's the most American thing. Like, you could probably phrase it better than I can.
It was used to say, look, the Japanese are regressive in their representation of women, but actually the women who were represented in a more Japanese style were quite well clad relative to Cindy, who is a very clearly Americanized icon.
Yeah.
Like, it was the same point I was making there, right? That somebody's designing this as a mirror of America, and America is looking in the mirror and not seeing itself. And all of this goes to some extent for Britain as well, but Britain does not have troops stationed in Japan. Yeah. And it isn't Britain that dropped nuclear bombs on Japan. Even if Britain was instrumental in the development of the bomb and a military ally, the relationship between Japan and America must be more immediately relevant to Japanese people than the relationship of Japan to Britain.
And also, the Americana aesthetic being evoked by Cindy's entire getup is very definitely American and not British.
Yeah. You dress like that over here, you catch hypothermia. Develop hypothermia.
Yeah, whatever. People know what we're talking about.
They're Daisy Dukes.
Yeah.
Right?
That's literally fucking, and now they're gonna be visible as a chibi because fucking Pocket Edition. Why do they keep making Final Fantasy 15?
Yeah, well, I mean, that one's an interesting question, which maybe in a year's time we'll have a better idea of how to answer. But cross-media kind of franchising is a big thing in Japan, but until recently that hasn't turned into cross-platforming very much. Like cross-platforming a single game.
They did this with Final Fantasy VII, right? But that had, a fan base who demanded and wanted, more content of this years after the fact.
Yeah, like...
Well, Final Fantasy 15 is jumping to the same cultural cache when it just hasn't been that long.
Yeah, like with FF7, I don't think there was anything immediately afterwards, right? It was like they made Dirge of Cerberus a couple of years later, and the movie, and Crisis Core, but it wasn't. It wasn't anything like as all-in front-loaded as it has been with FF15. I'm
still genuinely pissed that I'm not going to get to play the Assassin's Creed event. I'm a sucker, and I want to play that event because it's garbage trash for me. Just for me. Thank you, Square Enix, for this gift that I will not be able to open because you're fucking putting a time limit on it. You stupid assholes. Anyway.
Feels emblematic of Square's decisions lately because it's like too late for Assassin's Creed crossover. Like, people like Assassin's Creed are just Assassin's Creed fans. It doesn't have that crossover appeal anymore.
Yeah.
So I look at it and it's just this bizarre decision.
Yeah.
I mean, this is also the company that made a one-of-a-kind £500,000 tie-in car for this game. I'm still mad about the car, okay? The car was stupid.
Yeah.
Maybe conspiracy theory, the car in this crossover is to court Western fans, but they just have literally no idea what Western fans actually want.
I don't know if that's...
a car that costs like more than a house.
God.
Why?
Yeah, I'm genuinely just kind of pissed that I definitely won't be able to play 15 before that event ends. Because for some reason, single player limited time events are okay now. I hate you, Square Enix. I guess they're doing it as a crossover promotion with the Assassin's Creed Origin where they ran out of forward time, so they're going back even further in time than Assassin's Creed 1 that's coming because it's Assassin's Creed Origins. But, ugh. I
mean, like, gachas have, like, limited time events, right?
Yeah, but it's not a gacha, it's a fucking silly story mode in a video game.
Yeah, but also, like, gacha is one of the biggest commercial things in Japan right now. So I totally understand why they're experimenting with things that come from kind of gacha stuff.
They're not applicable at all, and if anyone at Square Enix actually fucking thinks that, I'm going to deck them from across the fucking ocean. Like that.
The car, alright? And the Jamie Oliver restaurant tie-in menu.
Fucking
right?
Useless.
The marketing department at Square Enix were really, really desperate. And we know that marketing forces do a lot to shape... It's not just Japanese games, right? It's all games. It's marketing is hugely important for the way games culture develops.
Yeah.
Sadly.
When I talk about these things, I always get somebody going, what's the big deal? Square Enix can do these things. People like it. It's like, even if one person likes it, whatever. I'm going to address that argument, though. Square Enix is probably an attractive company to work for. At least as a youth and you're growing up, you're like, I want to work for this company that make games I like. The same reason people end up working for Nintendo. And Nintendo seems to nurture their talent and put people at the helm of games like a new Mario game, even like the new Super Mario Bros. 2 on the DS. People that traditionally were directing games or producing games were allowed to work on that game. And they do things like Splatoon and ARMS, and they're experimenting and they're going forward in their own direction. And Square Enix has been dumping just barrels full of money into Final Fantasy 15 instead of like doing anything else. Just anything else.
I mean, it's not entirely been instead of, right? Because we've had World of Final Fantasy and we've had I Am Setsuna. And
what
we've got
Project
the new
Sphere
one.
Or whatever?
Yeah. Project
Lost
Sphere,
Sphere.
spelled SFEAR or something.
But I'd like them to try to make a MOBA or whatever, but they always outsource these games. But like Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition is like the most understandable of these decisions.
Yeah,
I don't know. It just seems like a irresponsible and extravagant display.
I think it is irresponsible and it is extravagant, but it's also basically it's the sunk cost fallacy at work. This thing has dominated what Square Enix have been doing for 10 years, and it's clearly dragged some careers down with it. It's clearly been a nightmare for a lot of people at the company. I don't think it's a symptom of cynical decision-making processes so much as it is a symptom of just nobody having any idea what they're doing or being able to move past it. Right? What they need to do is just let it die and make other games. And they haven't even announced FF16 yet. Now, when FF13 was announced before FF12 was released, FF15 is the same age, but they haven't announced a new FF IP.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that worries me, because to be honest, we shouldn't care if a particular company lives or dies as a corporate institution. And if there are no more Final Fantasy games, it's not actually that crashing a loss, unless it means that the people who made those games don't work again. But it really feels like we're just waiting, basically, for FF16 2019. Yeah, it won't be 2019, but they might well try to announce it for 2019. They also have to deal with Kingdom Hearts 3 first.
And Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is a disaster waiting to happen.
God. What if that's the first game we get review copies for?
I would die. I will do my best to make sure it's Dragon Quest XI. God damn it.
Give us review copies.
Hi, Square Enix, please.
I don't even care if NIS wants to give us review copies. I will review your game. Give me whatever titty nonsense. I will take it seriously.
I'm playing fucking Fairy Fencer Advent Dark Force. I'm gonna take that seriously because it looks interesting, and also is a compile heart game that isn't fucking Neptunia, so it's probably alright.
Hopefully. Anyway, other things that came out this year, Tales of Berseria came out. That's another one, actually, that the point about Japanese games as reflecting an opinion of Western culture, because the whole discussion of reason that's in that game is absolutely a discussion of the role of reason in Western philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
You can listen to our mini episode on that for more information about that.
Actually, on that, I think I hadn't brought it up because I hadn't beat the game, but I did beat Lightning Returns, and Lightning Returns is also kind of a reflection on that logic versus emotion stuff, and then you kill God because fuck just being logic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much about that because, like, the key point there is a massive spoiler for a game that still not a lot of people have played, and hopefully people will play because it's good. But there's definitely like a thing to do with particularly self-denial. Like, that's one aspect of how we understand reason in the West is a kind of self-denial, and FF13-3 definitely goes in on that.
And it was really cathartic to beat that final boss. Like, it wasn't difficult, just really, like, satisfying.
We've mentioned, but haven't talked in much depth about World of Final Fantasy.
I think you're the only one I think that's the only one you've only played that one.
I'm the only, yeah, but, I mean, that one is a game about video games, very specifically, and I did a write-up on it in which I argued the kind of position I thought it was taking. I think it's a shame that we've seen so little discussion of it as a game. I think it's pretty good, and it's worth mentioning. You both played I Am Setsuna, which I still haven't.
No, I didn't finish.
That was 2016, I guess, right?
Yeah, but that was like early 2016.
Was it?
Yeah, it's been a fucking while.
God, really? I would have sworn it was last autumn.
I think it was March 2016, but that's just me shooting.
It was July 2016 for worldwide.
Okay,
right.
It was in Japan in February.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I remember February release just because of the snowy game, and I thought, oh, that's funny, but just Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played like a single sitting of that, and I was just like, no, this isn't doing it for me, so I stopped, and Leroy actually finished it.
I wrote a kind of complicated, nuanced thing on it. You can read that instead of talking about it.
Yeah. Well, that was about kind of nostalgia and kind of the mythology around the genre. That was quite good. The other game I want to draw attention to, because I take every opportunity I can to mention it, is Exist Archive, The Other Side of the Sky, which is, like, it's probably the most tri-ace game that's actually kind of tolerable to play. Like, the plot structure makes sense and is relatively accessible, the mechanics feel okay, it's got all the usual extravagance of tri-ace games, but just restrained enough to work, and I really hope I get time to go back and finish it, maybe write something about it, or discuss it in some depth, because I think it is, it's good to see that tri-ace maybe are getting somewhere, aesthetically speaking.
They've been making games for so long.
Yep. I mean, this year also saw the release of Star Ocean 5, which none of us have played.
Was that last year or this year?
I mean, it was in 2016, but I think it was after
June
the start
28th.
Oh, okay.
Either way, Star Ocean 5 is just probably a disaster. I don't need to play it.
Yeah. I
still think Resonance of Fate is them getting somewhere, although where they got was just a dark place.
Like, I have some really kind of potent memories of Resonance of Fate, and I still think it's interesting. It's impossible to recommend playing it because there's 40 hours of tedious crap in there and it's so hard.
It's paced like Persona, except it's also nonsense. And barely comes to climax and make any sense.
And also, enemies skill to your level, and if you don't focus a character on one specific type of weapon, they're fucked forever.
Its combat acts like it's like an established style of RPG playing, except it just made it all up on the spot and you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, run over lines. Just run over lines, run over lines, run over lines. That's all you do. Jump and shoot. God, I hate that game. I hate that game.
Any other games you want to pick up on?
Persona 5 was decent. I never finished it still.
I did. I sat through it all in a week. It took 85 fucking hours of my life. I'm never getting those back. And also, I hate it. Like, it's playable. Like, it's much more, like, accessible to actually play with how they structured the field movement and stuff. So it's just like, oh, I can move around quickly, and the dungeons have actual design in them, instead of just being a random fuck-off labyrinth. There is a random fuck-off labyrinth, but it's the optional bit, mostly, that you do between designed dungeons, so I'm fine with that. The social link stuff is still as garbage as ever, except they added mechanical benefits to leveling up your social links, so it's really fucked up that I had my homeroom teacher massaging me every night. I wasn't even dating her. She was just there in a maid costume giving me massages so I could go out and do stuff. Also, she still did laundry and made curry on command because fucking Persona.
You're basically blackmailing her, actually. That's why she does it.
Except, like,
God.
by the
That's
end...
like the that's like the power dynamic.
Yeah, but by the end of the fucking the end of the social link, she's not getting blackmailed. She doesn't do it for work, and she doesn't need to...
Oh, right.
Like, okay, so the entire art...
It's like Stockholm after being blackmailed.
Yeah, basically. So basically, like, you call a maid service, and your homeroom teacher shows up, and you're just like, okay, whatever. She's just like, keep this on the down low and I'll get you some fucking free time in class so you can do whatever. And you develop your social link, you find out she's working because she needs money to pay off the relatives of a kid who, I fucking forget. Like, he was too tired because he was studying too much, so he got hit by a truck or something and died. And they're trying to, like, blackmail her. Yeah, she's getting double blackmailed. Like... That's her social link. This lady gets double blackmailed.
God, this game's vile.
So basically, you go into Mementos and change the hearts of the people who were blackmailing her, and she's just like, oh, cool. I don't need this job anymore. I can just be a teacher, be a good teacher, but you still have her doing fucking chores for you because it's Persona 5. And she's the most useful one to level up, too, because her level 10 ability is that, and by this point, it doesn't even cost money. Like, you have to pay to have her work as a maid for you. But once you get to max level, she's not asking for any money because she doesn't need it, and she'll just, like, come by and give you a massage. So if you go to a dungeon, you can still, like, go out and do stuff at night. Because she, like, relieves your tiredness. And it's just like, God. You're not even my girlfriend. This is weird. This is weirder than if you were my girlfriend, which was fucked up because the first arc of the game is about a student-teacher relationship being a fucked up power dynamic.
So, wait, is the teacher a romance option or not?
Yes.
I dated her.
She is.
Dark Confessions.
God
yeah, she is.
Almighty.
And people were like, yeah, you can fuck the teacher. And it's just like, no, you fucked up. If you fuck the teacher, you fucked up. Lyra, you fucked up. That's like
okay.
fucking...
I don't have a real defense besides it's my fetish, but I have a half defense. I have a half defense in that every time I play Persona game, the first girl I date, when she confesses, I can't say no. Because I can't break her heart. I know it's just a video game.
That would have been Anne for me, which is like, I guess.
And I did her social link first because it's the most important if you want to max out the other social links. And then she confessed and I couldn't say no.
But yeah, like, I find it weird when people like the Inkling girl, Futaba, too. Because it's just like, she's your fucking sister, basically. Like, she's just, ugh.
At least Kawakami's an adult. I mean, it's messed up, obviously. But... The Futaba one's like really vile because it just feels like a really codependent relationship because this person has no friends, has been in doesn't know how to be social anymore, and you're like her lifeline, and you're getting her out of this. And to change that to a sexual relationship is just really fucked up.
And the fucked up thing is, like, her caretaker is also a social link, and he's your caretaker. So if you max that social link out, he's just like, hey, don't date my daughter.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it would be an unreasonable thing, but you'd have to give her some time. You couldn't translate into, this girl is finally making steps to being the real world to, I'm fucking her, like, the week after. It's just, the pacing is really off and makes it vile.
Fucking weebs.
And I mean, she's like your adopted sister.
Yeah.
So.
And like, that dynamic is really nice, and I just wish there was an option. Like, the two options are, I'm helping you out because we're on a team, and I'm helping you out because I like you, basically. And I just wanted to be like, I'm helping you out because you're basically my little sister. What the fuck, game? Ruining everything.
It's role playing. You shouldn't be able to just date every girl. It's just
it's just
up. Like, they want to cater to the player at that point. Like, you just feel like, hey, this is wrong. I don't know why I'm able to date every single girl.
And you can date every girl at once. And then on Valentine's Day, they all show up and you're just like, oh, that was a mistake. Why did you let me do that?
The literally best thing that Persona 4 Golden did was add the Valentine's Day bit where literally all the girls come up to you and then all of them but the one you had chosen are like devastated. It's such a slap in the face. It's
I think
great.
in Persona 5, if you do that, you don't get to have the date scene after. You just lose it.
Yeah, no. There was a guide that I was using, and it was just like, yeah, you can date multiple people, but there will be a day of reckoning, and you will not come out unscathed. And it's just like heavy language. But I dated the fortune teller because she was cute, and yeah, I helped her get her ass out of a cult by fighting the worst boss in the game, who brainwashes your entire team on the opening turn, and he wiped me even on safe mode. Because fucking brainwash.
That's pretty grim.
I mean, me and Max...
Also, we haven't talked about...
we could finish the Persona 5 thing, but I just said, like, me and Max agree, like, if you can date your goddamn teacher, you should be able to date the weapon shop guy, but whatever.
I would fuck that dude so hard.
I mean, like, the extent to which the games would be sanitized by including, like, a comprehensive set of gay romance options as well is just ridiculous.
I mean, the design decisions that you can date literally everybody at least make sense now. It's consistent. It's dumb, but like, I can date everyone. Yeah. It makes sense. That's just what the game's doing. But no, that's not how it works.
Only the women.
We haven't brought up Nier Automata. That happened. Holy shit, did that happen?
That's I told myself I would play it after finishing Persona 5, and that's my hang up here.
Get on with it, Leroy. I didn't buy you that game for it to just sit idle.
I feel bad, but I let everything sit idle.
I demand your takes on the game. No, actually, I can't talk because I really need to write like a philosopher's guide to that game and why it has like Kant and Marx and Hegel and so on in. But I kind of feel that in Nier, those kind of references are all to folklore. They're all fairy tales, and it. Almost like a module being removed and replaced has been replaced with like philosophy references, and I'm not sure they're that deep. They're a bit disappointing.
Like, it's like fucking Pascal makes some fucking line about Nietzsche, and it's just like, okay, that's cute. That's also the only time philosophy comes up, basically at the end.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's much. I think where Nier Automata is really strong is in the kind of second half of the game, the CD stuff, with some of the ways the environment changes are really evocative.
I'm of the opinion that, like, you could have cut Route A entirely, honestly, and B was even then kind of useless if you've played Nier. Like, it gives room for 9S to develop, but I just, like, nothing in that route is new if you've played Nier.
Yeah. The thing is, I thought Route A accomplishes a pretty good job of doing both the Nier trick and going beyond it for the benefit of people who've played Nier. So, like, we've all played Nier. When we did the opening sections of that game, we already knew that there was going to be the robots are people too kind of reveal. But I have also watched people play it who have not played Nier before and who have had the robots are people 2 reveal that is the equivalent of the Shades of People 2 reveal in Nier. And it's still, like, it works, it carries it, and it hits quickly enough that they kind of get up to speed. But, I mean, mostly what Automata has left me with is a deep frustration with people who are still shipping
I was
9S
going to
and
ask
2B,
about that.
'cause that's a fucking
I
terrible
was going to ask
ship.
about that because that relationship
Yeah.
is in the what I see from fandoms, always from people. That relationship's always put the forefront as like the thing about the game. I don't know anything about it.
It's an ending A relationship. Like, if
You didn't even get to ending B, you stupid fucks. Come on.
that's how I feel about it, right?
Yeah.
It's like if this. I mean, obviously, I don't want to say you can't ship whatever, and there are ways to do every ship.
I mean,
that are
you
fine,
can have
but also-
bad taste. Just fucking get some less basic ships. I don't know. Like, I get what you're saying though. Like, it feels like
problem
I
they missed
actually
the
have
point.
strong opinions about Legend of Dragoon ships, but I don't know if we'll get into them.
Oh no!
I probably do.
Anyways,
too,
I'll just
actually.
cop it off. The best ship is Rose and Shauna, and that would be the best ship.
Wow. Okay.
No, the best ship is the Queen Fury, like I just said. Haha. Anyway, we're still doing the fucking anniversary thing. So chill on
Yeah.
the Dragoon.
I mean, it is so weird to me now that Yoko Taro is giving cover quotes for Undertale. Because in one sense, it's completely appropriate. Obviously, the person you want doing a cover quote for Undertale in Japan is Yoko Taro. It's just the most obvious thing
Or
ever.
Shigesato Itoi. Because,
Maybe,
no,
but
no, that quote was really good. I can't get enough of this. Oh, I was talking about this food I'm having. Like, did you not see that quote? Like, the Undertale fucking trailer is full of that shit, and it's just like, I forget what food he was having, but he was just like, I can't get enough. Oh, I'm talking about the food. And it's just like, that's a very Itoi thing to say.
But I mean, like, God, Automata has kind of. I feel like there is some weird sympathetic relationship between the success of the kind of breakout success of Undertale and the breakout success of Nier Automata, and I wonder what it'll mean down the line for kind of games 5 or 10 years from now, because it's impossible to imagine that there aren't people now making games looking at the success of Undertale and feeling that it's changed their idea of what's possible.
I mean, on the other hand, I've seen devs just make games that look exactly like Undertale, and I'm just like,
Oh yeah, I mean there'll be masses of that, but like that's not really what I mean. It's like it's something more lasting than that, and like Automata too.
It's having those boundaries being pushed, right? Like your traditional understanding of what this game's supposed to do getting like played with.
Yeah, I'm particularly hopeful that people, and I don't know to what extent it's happened. It's certainly not been part of the noise around Automata, but also I don't think it would be. People who appreciate Automata more than just in a kind of noise hype way, going back and playing Nier and just quietly going, "Oh shit, this game exists."
I honestly have not seen much of that, really.
Yeah, I haven't either, but like I say, I don't think it's something that you would see. Like, I don't think it would bleed through onto social media in a big way. The kind of response that I'm hoping for, if you like.
What would help is if Square Enix did like an accessible re-release of Nier.
Oh, fucking hell, please.
Yeah, just toss that shit on PC as is. It would run on a lot of shit, and then just toss it on Xbox One and PS4. Just fucking, it looks fine. Just do it. Just do a port. Don't do a remaster. Just fucking $20. Get your hot Nier, and by that I mean Dad Nier, that ugly motherfucker.
I mean, like, it's possible to imagine actually that they might be unsure about what to do with Gestalt vs. Replicant.
I don't think they would. Like, Gestalt would get released in the locations where it was localized without the subtitle, and if they would put out both on their respective platforms in Japan, which would mean Replicant would exist in Japan.
It'd be a good draw to translate Replicant, but I don't see them doing that either. Like, if you put them together in one game, like, people would want it because it's something new.
But I mean, the worry I have is that they kind of feel, well, we can't port it unless we also localize the other one, but we don't want to do that.
I don't think they would have that limitation on
themselves.
themselves.
Look at a lot of Square Enix's PC ports. I don't think they really care about standards of quality or reaching the gap like that.
Nice.
So maybe not a worry.
Wrong.
Maybe not a worry. Actually,
thinking about The Last Remnant and the fact that you can turn on like the ability to equip your parties with a single line in a config file.
I was just thinking about the recent Dragon Quest port on PS4, and it's ugly as sin. It's just they took the phone game and they just stretched the resolution port it. We're done. I'm just like, oh
Really?
my god.
Wow.
It's just what it looks like.
I actually have something to say about The Last Remnant. That's actually an engine issue. Basically, anything written in Unreal works off the presumption that it's still running on Unreal rules, which means an FPS from fucking 1990X. So it basically runs a single-player local server, so you need to be able to access any files to change things on that server, which is a very 1990s way of fixing things, but also makes it so, I don't know, I could play Dishonored and then make it so every time I shoot a dude in the head with my pistol, it's silent and also doesn't kill him, just knocks him out. Because it stores all the important data in there. Like, am I allowed to equip things on my entire army in The Last Remnant? Yes or no? Which is fuck.
Yep. Anyway, does that cover the year? We got any other topics we want to bring up?
I'm gonna say this right now, Nier is a lot better than Automata for me, and especially if I could have Nier without any Automata discourse whatsoever, I would have given up Automata existing. For sure, because, oh my god, the 2B9S ships are awful. Please stop.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't feel... I've felt pretty consistently that kind of towards Automata than you have, but it's not a patch on the original Nier, and the way people talk about it is so frustrating. Just like
I'm going to turn everyone around me into someone who hates anything discoursey around anything they like. One of these days, like, I'm just going to, like vampires, I'm going to infect you.
Actually, I have another question on the reception of Nier Automata compared to Nier. Why do you think that people were able to like understand and see the deeper themes in Automata and completely like miss them or ignore them in the original Nier when it came out?
I don't think they've seen deeper themes in Automata, to be honest. Like, I don't think Automata is as deep as the original Nier, and I don't think all of its depths have been explored by most of the people who played
it.
The
thing, I'll just say it, like the think pieces I've seen Automata like have to do with AI, robotics, the nature of existence, stuff like that. Whereas Nier was treated as like a low budget fantasy game that had no aims and no aspirations. It's true
right.
that Automata has not been like really tackled in depth, but the difference in the perception is staggering.
It might just be because we've moved into a different era with regards to games criticism, and also it's getting a lot more attention, so just like raw numbers wise, more people putting eyes on it, more people having admittedly sometimes shallow thoughts about it, means more people are going to have somewhat deeper thoughts in comparison to the somewhat minuscule amount of attention the original Nier got.
Yeah, like it's two things. It's the cultural shift. Like, there was nobody like Austin Walker in a position like editor of Waypoint 8 years ago when Nier came out. Now, Austin Walker as editor of Waypoint is not like a pedestal, but it's still indicative of a sort of shift, right? The kind of writing that was done about Nier that we've seen was not coming from critically astute people at all. Whereas a handful of people who've done good critical work are now in positions to influence discourse about Nier Automata. They haven't done good critical work about Nier Automata.
They haven't, but they could.
Like, they've got closer to it than they did with the original Nier.
And they're also trying, which is a step up.
Yeah, the attempt I'm grateful for, but also I think it's one of those things where if you get halfway there, that's somehow more frustrating to read than if you just don't try, because the takes are bad. Like, and it's not even about that much, really. Like, it's emotional. That's not to say that it is shallow, because I think it's emotionally quite forceful. And the credit I want to give it is that it did basically the same trick as happens at the end of the original Nier, and sold me on it again, even though I knew it was going to do that, which is remarkable. Like, I got to the choice at the end of Automata, and like 5 minutes earlier had not been expecting to feel it, and then felt it.
Mm-hmm. I think the Automata and Undertale thing is definitely a more fair comparison than I think is fair. Like, I think it's I know. They're both not necessarily particularly deep games, but they're definitely emotionally impactful And that's what they're going for, and that's all they're really going for, because they just want you to feel
People
things.
got wild stuff out of Undertale, but I just kind of have issues about how it's framed, but yeah.
Yeah, like, specifically the true pacifist end of Undertale, which I think it's the only ending I really got. Like, I went then neutral and then true pacifist because that's how you have to progress, which is silly, but, like, basically I was just like, yeah, I did it. I feel good. And that's how I felt at the end of Automata, too. It was just like, yeah, I did it. I feel good. And I made that choice. I bought all the trophies so I don't have to go back to it. And now I can be helpful.
So one thing, this is like just kind of a clarification. When I say, or maybe even when we say that, the takes are bad, we're not necessarily saying there's one true take you need to take on a game, right? But what we're saying is that criticism relies on textual evidence from, the game itself, and a lot of takes are lackluster on, like, supporting the things they say with things that actually happen in the game.
Yeah, and it's also, like, often it's not just the textual evidence, but it's also the contextual evidence. You've got to be able to point not just to, like, general principles of, JRPGs are dead now, but you've got to be able to talk about specific cultural and economic relationships that exist across the Pacific. And that's also really, really lacking. Why is suddenly JRPGs back? Well, probably something to do with Japanese companies having a bit more marketing money for one reason or another. Or maybe a shift in how, in the balance of power between Japanese and American developers vis-a-vis who's making what. There are loads of questions we could ask about that never get asked because people don't like to think about that context as influential because that interferes with kind of basic meritocratic assumptions.
I think it's hard engaging with canons or communities or even politics when you're writing for a website. You need to be focused on the game you're writing about, or at least there's this onus or this like supposed thought that it has to be accessible and focused on this one topic, and when the relationship the video game has is more complex than just how it relates to the game itself. But we usually don't write about things like that.
Yeah, like I see how that's the editorial kind of stance, but it's just wrong, right? I mean, if anything, you could make games much more palpable and make the virtues of games much more evident by being clear about how they relate to the real world.
I could write about how I Am Setsuna is, like, how good it is or whatever, but I don't think it's really possible to talk about I Am Setsuna without, like, addressing, like, the cultural landscape it's trying to assert or take over, and what it thinks about JRPG history and why it's coming out now. Like, those things are central to being on your mind when you buy and play I Am Setsuna. They're not just, like, things in the background, or they're not, like, it's inseparable from playing the game itself.
This is kind of comparable to a question we got last episode about characters. We were asked basically, why don't you discuss characters more? And we do. It's just always in a context instead of in a vacuum. And I think it's not easy to, like, access that stuff, but also if it was super easy to access, there probably wouldn't be a whole lot of, like, actual thinking involved in consuming the criticism. So
We just got through some in-depth character discussion on Persona 5 just to point out what relationships are vile, but yeah, we did it.
Basically. Is there anything else we would like to discuss before we move on to questions?
No, don't think so. I think we've covered it pretty well.
Good.
It's been a good year. Let's be clear on that. One way or another.
It has been a pretty solid year. I will just get my questions out of the way so we can move on to audience questions after that. What was everyone's favorite episode this past year?
So, I enjoyed doing Nier and FF12 and Persona a lot, but I think actually, in terms of usefulness, it's got to be Dragon Quest V. I think that was the one that we got, that helped us develop our approach the most.
It's a very academic pick.
I'm sorry, I can't help it. I am what I am.
How about you, Leroy?
I think the FF12 episode's my favorite, and it's like,
yes!
It's a pretty obvious pick, but that kind of insight and, like, really exhaustive research from a certain somebody, but having those elements and bouncing off each other, all these ideas and interpretations is what I like to do and what I like to hear, and so it was just easily my favorite episode.
I didn't want to, like, take FF12 myself because I feel like mostly I spent that episode mining you two for validation of my theories that I've been nursing for 9 years. Which
Granted,
I got.
that's what I did on the Persona episode too, so...
Yeah, and that's what we're doing this month and next month for me. I'm doubling my pain. Enjoy. I'm probably going to pick Suikoden 2 just because I love being a contrarian. And that was just like, hey, this game is shit. Come at me.
Suikoden 2, it was great fun to be that spitting mad for an hour and a half.
We were on point on Suikoden 2 and Ni no Kuni early.
Yeah, except Ni no Kuni wasn't, like, it took too long.
Ni no Kuni's defenseless, though.
Yeah, like, we didn't even fucking destroy the fucking Zodiarchy. Fuck you. That's a final boss name if I've heard one. So, which game surprised you the most of the ones we've played for the podcast?
Ooh,
I have a note on it, but Persona. I was surprised. I was surprised with Persona because people liked it for various reasons, despite its reception. And then I was surprised how shitty Ni no Kuni was.
Yeah,
but like Ni no Kuni was a fucking train wreck. Like I flew by that game, still bad. Like I went back to do like the optional post game stuff at one point, and I was just like, oh wait, no. I didn't like playing this. I was just coasting. Oh!
And the thing about Suikoden 2 is I kind of like the way people talk about it and how it's held in high regard. I had this thing in my head that this was going to suck. Like, there's no way these particular type of nerds are actually like, there's no way this game's going to be any good, just from what I hear from the people who like it and who likes it and why. So I wasn't very surprised when it turned to crap, even though I was disappointed, because I kind of liked things it was doing. But Ni no Kuni is the kind of game I normally like, and I would have liked, but I couldn't, because it was awful. And that, But like the weirdest upset, maybe this is spoilers for the cast are going to do, is Legend Dragoon. I didn't have any like expectations for it, and I didn't like a lot of things it's doing, but I think it's a game I'm going to care about and think about for a lot longer than I really expected.
It's a surprising game on multiple fronts. Like, how did Sony actually throw together a competent team?
It feels like a game they spent a lot of time on, and then you look it up and it was developed for 4 or 5 years or something, and it's just like, whoa. And it shows. Yeah. It's just like this really overdeveloped game. In a good way, maybe. It's
also like the second game Sony Creative ever made, so it's just like, whoa. Okay, so probably the most surprising episode was, like, I want to say Skies of Arcadia, but I also kind of already knew that game was going to be slow and plodding and not terribly good shonen anime fodder. I think Rogue Galaxy being so trash and paced like a fucking Megaten game in full scale was the most surprising. Because that game, that game takes so long. Oh.
Indicative to Rogue Galaxy, whenever someone says Rogue Galaxy, I just start laughing. It's like, Rogue Galaxy.
Like an 80s comedian with a laugh track.
Yeah.
Rogue Galaxy, press the laugh button.
God.
We should get a laugh button for the podcast and just do that.
I don't want to wire that into my computer. That would be horrific. I don't... Ugh.
Flicking a USB.
I don't need
and booze for Suikoden 2.
What's the sound for Xenogears?
Sirens. Sirens, because I'm going to kill the creators. Anyway, have you learned anything from either working on games for the podcast or related projects?
Well, I want to go back to Dragon Quest V again, actually. Like, the discussion we had, actually, some of it had spilled over from the previous one, because we talking about Ni no Kuni, we kind of formalised this idea of competence, and then that spilled over into DQ5 and looking at competence as this historical literacy thing. I certainly feel that that was transformative to my approach to these games, and without having done that, I wouldn't have been able to write the things I wrote about World of Final Fantasy, for example, which is probably the best thing I've written this year, and my Final Fantasy 15 work. I'm not sure besides that, like, the rest of the year has been quite inconsistent and a number of disappointments. Yeah, I think that would be what it is for me.
How about you, Leroy?
So another thing I've been doing is like writing weekly, and it's hard on a person. It's stressful. Mm-hmm. And as I've been trying to do critical work like every week, I've been just like constantly reassessing my relationship to art. I mean, so art's the staggering form of expression constantly around us, but like as I think about that and as I spend a lot of time on it and try to find new directions to talk about it, I get the overwhelming feeling that, art's kind of unimportant. Encountering that, it's like I have this old man wisdom that unimportant things in life, we get a lot out of reflecting on them, which some people don't like this line of thought, but I do. So, like, I've been doing, like, a lot of criticism and stuff, and I'm just becoming more and more humble as I put more work into it and find out there's not that many avenues I can really pursue as I exhaust things to talk about it. So what I'm getting at is I don't really think I'm amazingly smart or anything I say is really revelation, but I get help from other people, and I help myself just sort things out and like have my unconsciousness bubble forward, and I find out things that are just kind of sitting in front of me. And this is just like also like I'm 23 and I'm still learning things about myself, but all this work and discipline, I'm feeling like more at peace with things lately. Even maybe it's also because politics are really bad and I just kind of like everything toxic just had to like fall out of me, or I was gonna like have a like freak out. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I mean, everything's awful, of course, and it's just awful, you know, but I feel just more confident and just more a part of things instead of trying to control things, I guess.
Just kind of vaguely related to your year, Leroy. When did you and Max start making things that aren't real? Which is the game they just released, by the way. You should check it out. It's excellent.
We started working on it. I think we started working on it in July. No, we started working on it in June. Definitely June. It was the middle of June.
It's within the same period that you've been talking about.
Yes. I mean, it's kind of like the end of the period, or just kind of like stuff I've learned about myself and what I've been doing in a way.
Because I found that a really compelling experience. I think it's a really sophisticated piece of work. Though I do kind of worry that maybe I'm a complete schleb and have no idea what I'm talking about.
I mean, I'm not really. I can't really be an authority on the thing I made, so that's nice to hear. I agree with you.
Other people that I know you think are smart have more or less agreed with my opinions on the game, so I must be getting something right. But anyway, Devin.
I've learned basically that I need to work on my critical skills more, and because I feel like I'm basically the anchor and host for this podcast and not so much a heavy lifter when it comes to actual criticism, because it's kind of hard to compete against the artsy indie dev and a fucking philosophy lecturer. So
I mean, honestly, this anniversary episode, you did a really good job in all the discussion points you brought up and said. So
I mean, I was looking at a list, we just pulled up the list of things we've done.
I had the list too. I'm just saying, you improved maybe at an imperceptible rate to yourself, but you know, I thought you did a really good job this time.
That's good to hear. I still feel like I need to actually contribute more, but I've kind of been a plebeian fucking consumer my entire life, and I'm still working on shrugging that off, as we all are in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also learned that I cannot keep a fucking deadline when I'm writing. I'm so sorry, Leroy. I need to fucking finish my writing. I'll do that.
I got this like weird ultimatum. If I had time, I would finish Final Fantasy 13 and tell you, you know, I'm going to ghostwrite that essay if you're not going to finish it.
Fucking finish fucking P5 and Nier Automata first. You.
Yeah, probably should.
Okay. So, with all that said, with year 3 on the horizon, what are you two looking forward to in continuing the podcast?
What games are on the list?
The link's in the Discord modjet header.
Yeah. I mean, what we've tried to do with the year to come is venture into the unknown, which is good because I keep suggesting games based on them having cult status and they turn out to be shite. So I'm looking forward to
Fantasy 12.
Or Final Fantasy 12. But I'm looking forward to doing games that are less influenced by what I'm mistakenly expecting to be good.
And then also Nocturne.
And then also Nocturne. I was almost going to say that, yeah.
How about you, Leroy? What games are you looking forward to?
I mean, I'm looking forward to reading Historia just for the classic DGC dynamic of me suggesting a game I really like and hoping if everyone else loves it. Hopefully they don't hate it. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, reading Historia has a lot of things that feel really relevant to just me, which is why I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know how people will like it, so.
That'd be interesting then.
I am looking forward to Superstar Saga, probably, but also Nocturne is going to be nice to have an excuse to actually sit down and play that fucking game. I'm also looking forward to some stuff outside of this podcast specifically. Maybe we want to talk about what Leroy is doing and what I'm doing over the coming future. I don't know when these are going to happen. How about you go first, Leroy?
All right, I've already organized doing like an indie RPG podcast with John Thayer. They are a really talented game dev, and they have strong opinions on RPGs as well. So it'd be a good fit. We'll be able to talk about the games kind of from a design standpoint as game developers who also kind of do arty things that are similar to the things we're going to be talking about. And our first episode should come out next month. We'll be playing Middens. I guess it'll be this month when you hear the episode probably, but we'll be playing we're playing Middens, which is a surreal, a very dense RPG. And we'll be talking about the techniques that go into making an RPG Maker game and what makes them tick, and like the expressive potential of video games outside of commercial games, and it should be pretty exciting.
I'm really looking forward to that, and I might be coming on a few episodes to talk about games, maybe, depending how much time I have.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to show up as like a guest or anyone on The Voice, but I probably will play along with the games. They're going to be pretty accessible, all of them, as far as I'm aware. So that'll be nice compared to some of the stuff we do where it's just like, oh, you got to own a PS2 for this one next year. Or emulate it. I am going to be doing a monthly travelogue podcast with Samuel Howitt, who is a friend of the podcast. We're going to be playing at least the first 2 Witcher games, kind of in chunks, monthly, because it's a fascinating series because all of a sudden it blew up and has like an Ubisoft-sized open world RPG that everyone is calling the best thing ever. But I'm the stubborn asshole who refuses to play any video game with a digit on it without playing the ones before it. So we're going to play the first 2 at least, a couple chapters at a time, document our travels through them. We don't have a name for the podcast yet because I'm not witty enough.
Gerald's Tub Club. It's got to be a bathtub joke, god damn it.
The thing about The Witcher kind of has like a stranglehold on discussions about interactive fiction and RPGs in the West, so I've always been like latently curious of it, but I watched Max play through the first Witcher, and it was just horrible. It was just the most...
Yeah.
It was the worst indulgences of comic book writing combined with the worst indulgences of fantasy writing, and I'm just like, what the fuck? But, I don't know.
Probably explains why it's so successful.
Maybe Witcher 3 is good, as they say.
Yeah, basically. Okay, it's out of my fucking mouth now. Essentially, I used a synonym. I'm an idiot.
Basically, essentially.
The Witcher 3 is this huge open world game that a lot of people are calling like the gold standard for open world RPGs now, which is obviously an affront to the Lord and Savior fucking Bethesda with their trash that comes out every blue moon. But 1 and 2 are decidedly more linear and kind of restricted affairs, so we'll probably be able to follow like a couple of chapters every month format and kind of document our way through the plot. Sam has experience with Witcher 2 and 3. He's played Witcher 2 twice, but we're both going into the first one mostly blind, and he'll be more familiar with the series as we go into it. It's probably going to have a major format change if we hit 3 and still feel like doing it, because apparently that is just like a fuck ton of content. And I mean capital C content. I'm also looking into gathering resources and a co-host / victim for an Assassin's Creed podcast that I will not go into now because it's still in the pre-apocalypse phase of preparation. But yeah, look forward to non-strictly DGC content coming from us. Kind of affiliated with DGC.
Meanwhile, I will be actually developing and launching a course on video games. So if you really want to, like, if you're in Britain and you want to study video games with me as a lecturer, come to Liverpool in 2018. And also, I'm probably going to collapse back into MMOs. This is becoming steadily more and more inevitable.
Are you going to play WoW?
I'm probably going to play WoW. I've got the Destiny 2 beta on my desktop. It's terrible.
I've been wanting to play WoW for years.
Fucking, of course you have.
Should we do a video series where I introduce you to WoW then?
Only if you drag me along to get both of us into WoW.
I've played WoW before, just not since I was like 11, basically.
Oh god, we should start it, and we should make Demon Hunters, which are the edgelord premier. Oh, actually no, because you won't be able to if you're a new player. Damn, that's a shame.
I mean, I will be getting the X-Packs. I'm committed to getting max level if I ever play the dumb game.
Well, I mean, like, you only really buy like the battle chest and the latest expansion, but
right.
Yeah,
Demon Hunter is the most edgy. It's incredible. I'm definitely playing a Demon Hunter because it's cool.
Look forward to DGC affiliated content coming soon and plentifully, and Becky will be the only one that doesn't have her hands stained with all the blood that this is going to cause.
If I end up running an MMO series, that's definitely blood on my hands.
Yeah, but also I wouldn't be able to do it because I'd spend that money on Final Fantasy XIV, which is probably for the best. Anyway, let's take some audience questions. From Marcus, when's Final Fantasy XIII?
Year 4, Game 1. We've already decided this, basically.
From Colin, what is the perfect JRPG? And I have the perfect
FF13.
No, Drakengard.
No, but seriously, like, FF13 is probably the most tightly designed RPG
It's so
ever to
fucking
come out of
good.
Japan. Just in, like, I'm not just saying that flippantly. I think actually, if you want to know what the design history of a Japanese RPG can achieve, FF13 is the best expression of that. But you have to be prepared to approach it from its own perspective. You can't
Do
look
not
at it through
expect indulgence.
Don't expect indulgence. Don't expect anything about the Western lens for JRPGs to apply, right? You've got to come to it from this other history.
The real answer for the perfect JRPG is obviously Chrono Trigger.
Get
I hate
out.
you.
Or,
Persona 5.
Alternatively, it's Persona 4.
Children.
Oh, we were on the same one. Persona 5, Persona 4, same thing. I mean, I have a cheesy answer where, like, the perfect JRPG is your outline inside your head of this game you really want to make. Then once you start making it, it sucks because it's not the perfect JRPG anymore. But that's like relevant to game design in general. Like,
a platonic ideal is not real.
I'm just gonna say I'm usually gentle on games because making things is really hard, and it depends what you have high standards on, right? High standards on like things about social justice and moral things are really important, but high standards on like this concept of formalism that probably only applies to you, I don't know. Making games is really hard.
The perfect JRPG is whatever it is most people think they're playing when they're playing Suikoden 2.
Yeah.
They're playing Game of Thrones.
But Game of Thrones is also shit!
Game of Thrones has an RPG, I think.
It does.
This should be the perfect one.
It's bad. It's also not Japanese,
no,
so
it's not.
Disqualified. The Game
it's
of
published
Thrones,
by Atlas,
the Game
though, right?
of Thrones, the Game of Thrones, the Game of Thrones.
Stop it.
Video Game of Thrones.
How many spaces are there in Video Game of Thrones?
Not this! Not here!
I mean, obviously,
not now.
it's one
this
word.
Is not.
It has
this
to be
is
one
sacred
word.
ground. This is sacred ground. Do not bring this conflict here.
Video Game of Thrones.
Yeah. If Game of Thrones, there's no space between the game, right? It's Video Game of Thrones. Anyway.
Continue.
From Gay Anime Girl on Twitter. I know that the games for next year have already been chosen, but after that, what are the chances of you guys having some episodes about indie RPGs? And I mean the ones actually from Japan, like Standstill Girl, not Cosmic Star Heroine. See Leroy's podcast, but also chances are not zero. I'll say not zero. We're having doubleheader episodes this year, and that might work out. Like, we've talked about this before, fitting multiple shorter games into a single season, if we can find a through line for all of them, would work. I said season, I meant month.
Yeah.
But, yeah, if we can find a through line for, like, a set of them that we all feel we can get through and then discuss for a decent episode, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, the other thing is kind of translation access is the other issue.
Yeah, that's too.
If we can find, like, 2 or 3 translated indie Japanese RPGs, that'd be great to do.
Or we could all learn Japanese.
I've played some Japanese games. It just takes an incredibly long time when you're bad at Japanese.
Yeah.
I mean, I am learning Japanese, but like it's going to be a long time before I can read an entire RPG's worth of text.
I'm in the middle of playing a Famicom RPG, and I'm like 1/8 of the way through, and it took me a weekend to get that far, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, no, I'm certainly not ruling it out. I just think right now the availability and the through line isn't necessarily a mandatory thing, but it would be nice.
Yeah.
I missed my joke. I was going to say, are you implying the penny arcade games aren't JRPGs?
I got
it off my chest.
Fucking.
They look like Final Fantasy. I think they're JRPGs. All right, that's it.
The
that's
first
my
two
joke.
aren't. The first two look like
no,
ass.
the first two look awful.
Ugh. God. Whatever.
Reminder, they're pinning arcade RPGs, in case everyone forgot that.
I own all but one of them, and I didn't buy the last one because it was that point that it was like, oh, Dick Wolves, that's great. I don't want to fucking support these assholes anymore. And also Ziboid, eat my ass. I hate Ziboid designs, sorry. So, here's one from Where's My Gift on Twitter. Buckle in. I'm sorry, Odai, if I fuck up this reference that you're trying to make, but also, I don't know how to fucking...
I think there are 3 different references, actually.
Yeah, I know, but whatever. Evening was not Luge, Invisipi, and Jada Penn. Amazing to think you 3 have lasted a year doing this thing. What I would like to know is, what have you a lot learned over the years since you started doing this thing? We've done this for 2 years, actually.
Year, 2 years,
I mean, we've learned that we never get Odai's references, which is not going to come as a surprise, but,
we are all way too white for that.
Odai's references are great, though. They're always, really specific and esoteric, and I feel like he's saying something, I just don't know what it is.
Yeah. This is the problem. No, I don't mean any disrespect to the references. It's just that we're white. I'm sorry.
We're white, and it's just launching over our heads.
If Odai compared me to Donald Glover, I don't think... Maybe I'm taking off too much. I don't think it'd be incorrect, but I'd also be like, oh, that's kind of, boring. I don't want to be compared to Donald Glover. But since I have no idea what he's saying, it's just I'm like, I like this. It's probably good. I don't know. I can't make a judgment either.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of really esoteric trolling, so I love all of Odai's trolling, particularly the bits I don't understand.
I mean, you know what's a level he's making fun of us. We just don't know what level.
Yeah.
What have we learned? I mean, the big theme has always been that the Western picture of Japanese RPGs is wrong, and I think this year we've really, particularly in the first half of the year, we did a really good job of kind of working out what the general pattern of that mistake is, right? Of what goes missing, which is fundamentally about Dragon Quest. It's not entirely about Dragon Quest, but a lot of it is to do with Dragon Quest. And as a result of that, we've been able to do some quite robust work on broader cultural stuff, which, I've got a piece in the zine when we get that actually out, which talks about kind of capitalism as something that is manifesting in Japanese games in a distinctive way.
When you said zine, I had cognitive dissonance because I'm like, isn't it Zine? And I'm just like, oh my god.
So we had that.
You said it right, of course.
Yeah. We had this discussion.
I know, but it still happens to me. I'm always just like, that's not the right word, and it is. It's always the right word.
It's a slang term. There is no correct pronunciation. Please keep pronouncing it Zine, because also you calling it Zine is the funniest thing to me.
I'm actually confused for seconds when he said zine. I was like, what is the zine again?
On the cover, we should spell zine with a Y.
The first
so
zine
that everybody
ever.
reads it your way. And put sunshades on it.
This kind of relates to a question I actually wanted to ask the cast. Maybe I can ask it right now. Should I ask it right now?
Let's get through Odai's, but write it down or keep it in mind.
It's just sitting in my head.
Okay. What have we learned over the 2 years since we started doing this? I would probably say mainstream opinion is shit. We kind of knew that, given that we were into JRPGs to begin with. And the Dragon Quest is really actually just good. Which we didn't fucking know before, because no one talks about Dragon Quest unless it's 8, which is decidedly different from the rest of the series.
Apart from Leroy.
Yeah. Well, Leroy's the weird one. And no one listened to him, and then we played Final Fantasy. Hey, I'm not wrong.
I'm not disputing anything.
But, he was talking about Dragon Quest for, fucking year and a half, and then we finally played Dragon Quest V, and we were just like, oh, right, yeah, shit's good.
It's easy to talk about Dragon Quest because it's
such a fundamental thing. Yeah.
Fundamental's the word. It's so, when I talk about Dragon Quest, I'm just talking about design tropes in JRPGs, and it's easy to come back to Dragon Quest structure and level design and plotting, because a lot of JRPGs echo it. So yeah, I'd often rely on it as a shorthand, even though most people didn't know what I was talking about necessarily.
Yeah. And the second part of this question, would you say your bone has grown stronger as a group since you started doing this thing?
See, this is related. I was going to say what we have learned, or what I've learned, is that we've gotten really good at this, and that relates to...
We're the damn best.
That relates to our bond, but we've gotten really good at this. We go into sometimes, like, there's sometimes I'm not sure if we're gonna like have anything good to talk about on an episode, like maybe Rogue Galaxy, and then I come out of it, that was actually a good episode, even though the game is like we managed to extract all the good out of a game that we hated, and so like I think just we're really good at this.
I think it's also kind of weird that we're just like we have the least to talk about with games that are like just kind of alright. Like Earthbound was a really short episode. We had a guest on that episode. Theoretically, that should have boosted our like length to something like 2.5 hours, but it was like an hour tops. It was really weird.
Earthbound's also a game where, like, one of the rare games where it's actually been talked about at length, and what it does is decently well known. It's not common knowledge, but like people are aware of what level Earthbound's playing on.
A better example, I think, is FF5, which was even shorter.
Yeah,
and like. That's a good game. It's an interesting game. Okay, it's got some weird breakpoints, but like generally it's pretty solid. But there wasn't that much to say about it. But yeah, I mean, I guess to put a slightly less kind of upbeat and happy spin on it, a thing we've learned is that very few people care about this stuff. But equally, the people who do care are very good people. Thank you, all of you, for listening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we really do appreciate it when we hear that people have enjoyed it and have got something out of it. But also, like, being a little corner of the internet that nobody pays attention to is a little bit embittering sometimes.
Oh, it's hard. And I think our bond's grown stronger just because I don't bite my tongue when I have a really bad joke. I just say it now. And that's basically, like, that's just true. Really indicative of how anxious or comfortable I'm feeling. If I'm saying my bad jokes that just pop into my head. And I say them now. I just say the really bad jokes.
That is still really, really funny.
Yeah.
They're funny because they're bad. I believe in it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not quite as funny as Max is. But Max,
wow.
Max is the...
Shots fired! Max
like,
will like hearing that.
The thing is, like, the funniest things I have heard in this entire year are Max's intros to the Vextro podcast by a country mile.
I mean, I would say one of my talents.
It's all delivery,
and I believe in Max. And Max is really funny, and I mean that's why I like hanging out with him. But when it comes to me interplaying with Max, I'm just working as a, and this is, I guess, as a Japanese comedy, but I'm working as a straight man when Max does things like that. Like I didn't know about the recent intro. I didn't know what he was going to say, and I jumped at the bit. I knew how to react to that, even though I didn't really care about it. I was just like, oh, what the fuck, right?
I loved it so much. God.
Yeah, Max is a really funny guy, though. Really deadpan, really subtle. A lot of people don't like in a casual setting, they don't really know if he's being funny or not, and it's kind of hard to preach into like the level he's working at. But yeah,
and I feel like our bond has gotten stronger because I feel like I can maybe bitch about audio editing. Because God, it's so mind-numbing. I don't get paid enough for this shit. Please support us on Patreon.
Yeah, I think we've gotten better at disagreeing.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Like where we are at odds over a game. There were a couple of episodes early on where that was really tense. And
yeah,
I mean this month's going to be something of a test of that because like I really didn't get on with this game and it means a lot to you. And
it doesn't mean anything to me. I played it once when I was 7. What the fuck do you mean this? Like, I played it at Walmart. I bought it and tried to play it and didn't finish it. This has just been a long-standing, like, outstanding fucking thing on my backlog. This isn't gonna make me cry if you don't like this game. It's fine.
You better not get defensive when I rip it to shreds, then.
I think, honestly, that's another thing I've actually just learned as a person, too. I think I used to have a hard time with disagreements because I felt like I didn't have a lot of people in my corner, which is just, like, just difficulties growing up, basically. And so I would just like fight really hard for what I thought was the correct way of thinking or doing things, which is also common just being a male nerd and being just growing up that way and getting cultured that way. Mm-hmm. And now I'm just like, yeah, just let people have their opinions because life's too short. It's good. Some people like things, some people don't like things.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, we've stopped being quite so frantically angry in the Discord about bad takes.
I mean, they've just kind of, like, except when Sam brings some in, because he has a Google alert set up for JRPGs, like a fucking fool. I'm supposed to be the idiot. Excuse you. We don't look for bad takes, and they just haven't dropped in on us as much lately. Also, we've gotten rid of a couple of inflammatory people, I'd say, in the last year. So
there's that, but also I think we've gotten more mature about which takes are worth reacting to.
And which ones are worth laughing at, because some of them are just fucking funny.
Yeah, like individual people giving bad hot takes is not a problem. It's when an actual institution of games culture, like Polygon or Kotaku, publishes commercially a piece of writing that is actively harmful, is making racist generalizations. That's when it's worth getting angry about. And I've certainly gotten better at telling the difference.
There's also like that Crunch article, but everyone's reacting to that, so I didn't really react that much.
Yeah, I mean, like, we try to keep it focused on JRPGs because that's what we know about.
When Persona 5 came out, there were a lot of bad takes, though, and we were reacting to them.
Yes, we knew that was going to happen.
Yeah,
but even that wasn't as cataclysmic as it might have been.
That's because there were at least some measured approaches, and there are people who saw that the mask slipped, and they're like, this game is just Persona 4 again, and the problems with Persona 4 are not addressed, and that's not good. And that was good to see, instead of just everyone. I mean, I've just heard some absurd hyperbole about Persona 5, but it doesn't really faze me because I just don't believe in it. I just don't know how it happens. I just don't care about it. It's just like, I
really need to finish writing my thing about Persona 3. I've done, like, it's already, like, 8,000 words long, and I've done some really, like, some bits of it are really, really good personal writing, some of the best personal writing that I've done, but there's so much still to do to cover it all. And, why?
That is how Persona 3 goes.
True.
The only RPG I've been inspired to write about was Kingdom Hearts Recoded, which is just... I'm weird.
Yeah, Mr. Kingdom Hearts Scholar.
If I replay Chain of Memories, though, I'll have that duology laid out for people, because they're intensely related. They're actually the same game. Literally the same game. So...
I really, really liked Chain of Memories, so... Like, I got stuck because I completely misunderstood the mechanics, but I liked it a lot. Also, it has the best Organization 13 member in it.
Kingdom Hearts
which
2
one?
technically has
Luxine.
all of them.
Okay.
Anyway, we have a couple more questions for the audience. So much for this episode not being 3.5 fucking hours long. We're gonna split this up again.
The anniversary episode stuff's fun, though.
Yeah, it's fun. And also we had, like, general discussions, which isn't something we usually get to do. From Colin, what drew you to JRPGs in the first place?
It's not really a complicated origin story, right? Like, people in my family played JRPGs. I could play them well without feeling anxious. So I also liked being able to play a game at my own pace instead of always having to, like, match the demands of a video game. And I've always liked fantasy and reading fantasy books, and JRPGs bridge the two, like, simply. So, yeah.
I started off from a really adversarial place to JRPGs, but then I was in a student flat for a year with people who mostly played JRPGs, and I was just watching them enough that I started to get the itch to play the things they were playing. And it wasn't so much that they were RPGs as it was those games that I'd seen other people playing, I wanted to play them. And then I just found that I enjoyed them, and obviously they're a good value proposition for when you're a really penniless grad student and don't have any money for games, so you need to get all the time out of them that you can.
Especially before the advent of, like, the Steam era roguelite stuff, where it's just, like, endless video game in here.
Yeah. But also I'd have hated those, because what I want is games that tell stories, and RPGs do that, and roguelikes don't. And then I guess, like, when I started doing critical writing about games, I kind of thought that mostly what I was going to end up writing about were kind of platformers, because that's kind of the thing I play for fun. But I know how to do writing about stories better than I know how to do writing about any other aspect of games, so that obviously drew me to RPGs, and that led to meeting you two. And here we are. It's much more a contextual thing, I think, than anything specifically about the games.
What drew me into JRPGs was, like, I think this is part of my Tales of Symphonia thing, but, like, I'd played Pokemon before. I'd played Golden Sun, but it didn't really, like, process like a genre for me. It was just kind of like, oh, these are neat games that I've played. And then one time I went over to a friend's house for the first time, and he was playing Tales of Symphonia because he rented it, and he was on the final boss and watching the final string of cutscenes, and he was telling me all this stuff about this game, and all these characters had, like, huge backstories, and just, like, and he just rented this game, and I was just like, huh, this is really cool. Maybe I will also play this game, because I could rent it from our local Blockbuster, rest in peace. And, like, the most I'd played before then was, like, Mario, or Zelda, or Perfect Dark, or Golden Sun, or, like, a Harry Potter RPG on the Game Boy Color, because I like Harry Potter, and my parents were like, oh, it's a Harry Potter game. Do you want that one? But I already knew those stories, so I was just kind of like, yeah, it's a thing I already know. And Pokemon was Pokemon. Not really terribly heavy on the story, but it was like, this game had this beautiful, like, the ending cutscenes in Symphonia are really cool looking, and my friend was like rattling off the relevance of all these party members, and I was just like, that's really cool. I want to try this. And then I got wrapped up in everything, because I rented Tales of Symphonia over spring break, and I was just like, I'm going to play this game. And then when it needed to be sent back, I begged my dad to just buy the game so I could keep playing it.
Yeah, I suppose I should note that Symphonia was a big one for me. It was like one of the games that one of the first JRPGs that I played that really grabbed me, and I thought it was a really strong story after FF12, and directly led to me trying Tales of Vesperia, which sealed my fate as far as being into Tales games goes.
Yeah.
I kind of fell for like the general consensus about JRPGs for a while too. Like after being like a kid and playing Breath of Fire because I had them in my house, and liking Pokemon, and like I had this disdain for RPGs because they took too long to get to the point or whatever. And even though I would always be playing one in the background, and I liked playing them, but I'd also be like performative. Oh, it's so annoying though. I wish it wasn't. Whatever.
When I first moved into that student house with the RPG players, I literally spent months kind of battering them with zero punctuation memes about RPGs.
Yeah.
And I look pretty silly now. But my comeuppance.
It was actually when I read writing on JRPGs from Austin Howe and from Becky, and those actually really resonated with me and clicked, and I was like, actually, these games have been a part of my life for a long time, and I have really strong feelings and opinions about them. How they, develop and how they express narrative and aesthetic ideas. And that's when I was like, okay, actually, I was actually in the midst of working on a game I've like relapsed on working on, but I work on it occasionally. I'm working on an RPG of my own, and I was like, why do I do this performative thing where I don't like RPGs if I'm working on one, and I feel this strongly about them? And that's when I was just like, I'm not gonna do that. I like these. I just like it now, and that was like kind of a shift there. It was actually Final Fantasy VII was also a game where I was like, wow, there's some really, these games can tell really powerful stories, and yes, it was Final Fantasy VII of all games.
I mean, you can never tell. It'll make you realize stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, FF7 is a good game, let's be clear.
Yeah, that's the thing about 7. It's just, a lot of people had that realization when we played 7, and I did too, is all I was saying.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it wasn't so much that I was drawn in, or that I drew myself in, it's just like, just kind of realized that they were there one day, and I was just like, oh shit, nice. And then I spent like $20 and got a copy of Tales of Symphonia, and got like 400 hours of entertainment out of that fucking game.
Wow.
And I've gone now from being like grinding is the worst thing you can ever do to a game to being like grinding is good actually. That's just
me too. Like it's the reason I want to get back into MMOs, just to have something like really chill and vegetative to come back to.
Fucking no kidding. Like when I have a Final Fantasy 14 sub, it's always something that I can get on there and do. Like, even if it's just, like, doing nothing and, like, waiting for different things to go off, or doing fishing, or fucking just doing shit. It's just something to do.
So I've been writing about the psychology of addiction today.
Yep.
I actually don't think that's a big part of it with MMOs, but there are things that are grinding related with MMOs that clearly come from that. Anyway. I've
probably said this before, but people love grinding. They love doing the same boss in Dark Souls 20 times. It's just when it's not like
a paradigm shift, basically.
Well, it's not when it's something that they like it when they have to put 100% of their person into it, and they feel like they're developing a skill, which is a meaningless skill that's not going to do anything for you, really, pretty much. You could argue something, but it won't be that convincing. But when it's something like low intensity, it seems more useless for some reason, even though you're able to integrate that into your life a lot better than playing Dark Souls, but it's the one that's reviled more for some reason.
Yeah, like I would rather grind enough to fight a boss in Dragon Quest and be able to like listen to a podcast or just like relax and do whatever. I
can literally do work while I play Dragon Quest. Like, it's not...
Yeah.
I'm not being unproductive when I do it.
As I proved this year, I can grind in 2 RPGs at once.
2 versions of the same RPG, even.
I never actually did that. I was grinding in Rogue Galaxy at the same time as FF12. That was fun.
The fact that Rogue Galaxy needed to be grinded in is fucked up. with how long that game takes to play and how many encounters you fucking get, you would fucking think that you would be on level by the end of the game, but you fucking aren't. It's amazing.
Yeah, I had to grind too.
Okay, final audience question for the anniversary section. Holy God, it's over 2 hours. From Fuzzy Proxy, or Fuzzy, or Adrian, or Coolcat McHashtag. I wanted to say that it's been a delight to listen to you all these past few years, and I'm not just saying that because after both being a guest and a friend of the cast. In any case, what would you say are series that you feel like the podcast should cover that assess trends in modern JRPG designs, even if they don't catch more than a niche eye?
I guess the blind spots we could cover, and probably won't, would be a modern Persona game. Well, we've talked about them at length, right? Just never did an actual podcast on one. And MOBAs are like a huge cultural thing right now, and they're definitely JRPGs.
Oh no!
It's like how do we breach that topic?
No,
right?
I'm mad at you pronouncing that.
Oh, sorry.
Mobage. Because it's mobile games. That's MOBAs.
I always pronounce it like Babbages. It's just a MOBAge. You know why though? It rhymes with garbage. Sorry for people who play MOBAGes.
Me. I play Grand Blue. Eat shit.
Look out for the Kantai Collection episode in year 4.
I've played a couple of Mobage, some of them like really, really weird, like company girls, which probably no one should play. And I enjoy my time with them, right? But there's not a lot of aesthetic integration going on with them. They're kind of cynical games. I liked my time with Terra Battle. That's actually a really neat game and has stuff to talk about. But
Grand Blue has like an actual like plot and has an anime based on it, and it's not shit.
Yeah, Grand Blue looks cool. I couldn't figure out how to set it up, and I gave up at that person.
I mean, lots of people would say that the answer is Souls games, right?
Yeah, that's actually pretty relevant for Western game design because we're the one ripping it off the most.
But also, like, Leroy did a fantastic piece of writing on the Souls games that you should read 18 months ago or something.
Dark Souls fans hate it because apparently I got the lore wrong. It's lore, though. You can't get it wrong.
Who gives a shit? It was a really good piece of writing.
Yeah.
My lord, though.
And I honest to God think Compile Heart would illustrate a lot of things because I notice the kind of games that run in the circles of Compile Heart, the anime titty games, they actually are very similar. And Compile Heart's like the biggest touchstone of that subgenre. Is it a subgenre? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we were going to do Conception 2, but then we shifted that out for Pokemon.
And that's kind of relevant. Falcom games are pretty relevant in a niche way, but we've talked about one of them at least. So
one. And not even the full one, because it was the prequel to the good bit. No, we're not making that mistake again. I'm making everyone play Golden Sun and The Lost Age at once next month. So, yeah. And I'm also streaming it. God, I need to get back to streaming tomorrow. Like, I'm not going to have time to take a break. That's fun.
And I guess Atelier, did I say that right? I can't say it right.
Atelier. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not going to say it again. It has a really dedicated fan base, and we could talk about one of those potentially. I don't know.
I'd quite like to do an Atelier game at some point.
I would like to do anything that's not from fucking Ireland, because like anything.
I'm also like the
bad.
modern ones reflect more on the older ones, and it's actually like the one I played was more like the Black Sheep series where they tried to be more accessible, and I liked it to a certain extent, but I don't think that would be like indicative of like what the fan base likes out of the games. I played the first Iris game.
Iris, yeah. I think games that come to mind would be like Etrian Odyssey, actually.
Yeah. Especially if people go mad over EO5.
Etrian Odyssey's
they're going to.
First person, though. That's like my one-line review.
You got real quiet.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
Do you hear me now? There's nothing I can really do.
We might just want to wait until you get your digital voice back then. Oh, that's a series that we could fucking talk about. Castlevania.
No, you veto. I've suggested Castlevania before, and you've shot me down.
I'm saying we could cover. We won't, but we could. We could do Bloodstained if that's RPG-y enough.
The microphone's up to my face. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, I said Etrian Odyssey is Dragon Quest first person, one-line review.
Fair enough.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's good.
And Zelda, I guess. If we're going to mention Castlevania, we ought to mention Zelda.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild is like the only one.
Yeah. No, the rest of them are a bit too Zelda-y. Like, Breath of the Wild is actually kind of a JRPG, so...
When you could see the numbers, like, I have like, weird rules in my head about it, but once you can see the numbers, it's like, okay, we're there.
We could do a Monhun. Holy fuck.
There is that, actually.
I'm very sorry for your hands.
There's the actual Monhan JRPG coming out too, but
Monster
that
Hunter Stories.
But that wouldn't really reflect on it at all.
We could play any one of the Monhan likes, like God Eater, or
like Dark
whatever.
Souls.
I'm gonna fucking stab you.
I think that's a new record for the number of times Leroy said something for which the result has been a definite threat of violence. Good work!
Yeah, I'm on a roll today.
We have 2 hours left to go, or whatever the fuck it takes to talk about Legend of Dragoon.
Oh, God.
But yeah, we could do Monster Hunter World is going to be on PS4. If I can get a PS4, we could do that. Like, as a squad, we could do multiplayer shit for a month. That would be interesting. I don't know if it would be tenable, but
Worth a go.
Does it have crossplay with Switch? I wonder.
I think not.
All right, that's not a humble brag about my Switch.
I mean, I'm shit out of luck right now either way. So that's just a hypothetical on the horizon for Gear 4.
The Switch is mostly thanks to my brother, but yeah.
But yeah, we could cover... I don't know if Castlevania would actually be fair, because like they stopped making Igavanias and turned it into a God of War knockoff. But yeah, Etrian Odyssey would be or Monhan would be my suggestions.
I think if Super Paper Mario counts, then Castlevania counts.
I mean, they stopped.
Yeah, they're not like relevant right now.
Yeah, except
the games
for
that bite off
Bloodstained.
from a lot are indie games, not really mainstream games.
Which, I mean, would kind of count, because like, whatever. Metroidvanias are weird, and Metroids aren't RPGs, so are they?
If you ask Austin C. Howe, he would say yes.
I don't fucking care what he says. I want your answer. That's why I asked you, and not him.
Okay, I would say no.
Okay.
I can kind of see an argument for it, because they're, like, partly they're about gaining more abilities, but it's a tenuous one.
I brought up Howe's definition because it's fascinating to me, and they think it starts with Mega Man, basically. Like, if your character gains power over the course of time, you could call it an RPG. Which, at some point, you're like, okay, that's just video games, but...
Yeah, I would say that. That's just video games.
It's still interesting. There's efforts to, like, try to accent how much you're actually role-playing a character or not, but, you know, it's just like...
I mean, I would say on that particular criterion, there are games where that's not the case. Like, there are skill execution games where all the development is your ability to press the right buttons, rather than software gating within the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there are lots of games that have some sort of accumulation of power where that accumulation of power is not actually necessary to clear any particular software gates. Like, you don't need this specific ability to beat that boss. You can beat the boss however you want, and this ability makes it easier or gives you extra chances or whatever. Like,
the reason why I sound kind of strict when I talk about RPGs is because I don't think of them that strictly, honestly. I view them as, if they're not action games, I view them usually as interactive fiction. So I just see them in that tent. So, like, the difference for me is, like, can you see the numbers? Are numbers relevant to this? Are they from the lineage of pen and paper games? And if so, then they're like, they're video game RPG, and it's not that complex in my mind, because they are just already really similar to visual novels anyway, but you just interact with them differently.
Fair enough.
Okay, let's move on to the second half of the episode. Thank you for listening to the first half of this episode of Dead Genre Chronicles. This episode went long, so we've split it into 2 halves like we did with last year's anniversary episode. You can find our work on our website, jrpgsaredead.fyi, or our Twitter at jrpgsaredead, or individually at Invisible for me, at Eat the Pen for Becky, and at Was Not Why Not for Leroy. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/deadgenre. Thank you for listening, and join us for the second half of the episode later in the month.